Hi, I'm Gabe Lyons, the founder and president of Q, and I just want to welcome you to Qunion. We are so excited that you've taken this evening to spend time with your peers, to come around important ideas, to hear from them, to hear what's on their mind tonight, to understand more how we can all be a part of solving problems together. You know, the theme tonight is called The Power of We. The idea that you and I together have a responsibility to be a part of the solution. We can't just look to others to fix the problems that we see in front of us or the issues that we're dealing with on our campuses or in the world. It's easy to do that. It's easy to sort of push off the responsibility to the leaders of the institutions, or maybe to think about government as it's their responsibility to solve issues that you're concerned about. Or maybe you think religious leaders should solve problems and churches should be part of the solution. But the reality is we're called and have the opportunity to step into this, to be a part of renewing things that are broken. And so I invite you tonight, as you listen to these talks, as you hear talks that are coming from this national broadcast to multiple college campuses and cities all around the world, that you'll consider, what does it look like for you to step up, to take responsibility, to be a part of solving any of the issues, concerns, problems that you have, that you're faced with, and to consider and imagine maybe some new and fresh ways and ideas that will just come from this evening that will help you know how to take action, how to move forward. Now, the format of this evening is quite unique. We have multiple talks that you'll hear. Each talk is timed to 9 minutes. And so you're going to hear these ideas quick and fast. You're going to hear some great stories. You're going to hear some inspiring people who I respect dearly. And then on your campus, you're going to get to hear from your peers. They're going to be addressing issues and topics that they believe are important for you not only to hear from them about, but also to discuss amongst one another. And so throughout the evening, there'll be time for you to have those discussions. And what I invite you to do is to listen, to learn. It's easy in this culture to kind of celebrate those who are the loudest, who post the most, right? Who are the ones who offer their opinions the strongest, and it kind of shuts other people down. Well, we don't want tonight to be like that. We want this to be a sacred space where there's actually room for people to disagree, but to do it respectfully. We know that's not modeled well in our media. It's not something we often see. It's often not the thing that's celebrated the most. But one of the things we learned in recent research, 67% of Americans right now, they believe and they would call themselves kind of the exhausted middle. You see, only 14% of our country are the people who kind of live ideologically in a lot of the extremes. And in those extremes, they are the ones who are sometimes the loudest. They're posting on social media and every platform the most. And that noise starts to make all of us kind of back away, maybe to be quiet. But 2/3 of your peers, 2/3 of the people in the room right now are a little exhausted by that. Well, we want tonight to be a departure from that. We want this to be one of those spaces where you feel free to share your thoughts, your opinions, but to also listen and learn from others. That requires humility, it requires respect, and it requires modeling something that maybe you haven't seen as often as you wish you had. But in your generation, it's going to be critical that you know how to live this out and model it for others who are longing for this, deep in their heart, deep in their soul. And so I want to invite you as we begin this evening to consider, what is it in this evening for you? Why is it that you're here? What is the message for you? What is the way that you're going to come out of tonight and take action to do something where it's not just another discussion around ideas, but it's about how do we advance good together? And so for our first talk, I'm so excited to introduce you to someone who's been a person who's lived out the idea of this talk so well in her life. And her talk's called The Gift of Hospitality. Well, Jo Saxton, she's somebody who's lived in a lot of different environments. She's in her own life had to grow up in different spaces. She was raised by Nigerian parents. She grew up in London, and now she lives in the U.S. She recently wrote a book called The Dream of You, helping inspire people to really understand God's calling on their life and how that calling could impact the world and his plans for the world. And so we're excited for her to kick off this evening with our first Q Talk. Let's welcome Jo Saxton.
So when you think of hospitality, what comes to your mind? I wonder if you think of a hotel and the room service and the luxury, or I wonder if you think of times when people have come to your home, to your space, and the pressure you felt to perform for them in some kind of a way. When I think of hospitality, I think of my family. I think of a home where the pot was always full to overflowing with food, where neighbors and friends were coming by, people who became our family because we're all immigrants working out our way in the world. Sometimes it was great, other times it was really uncomfortable. but that's what hospitality meant to me. What I want us to think about is not just these expressions of hospitality, because that's all I'm referring to really, the expressions. I want us to think of the definition of the word, because I believe if we understand the definition of hospitality, it'll challenge us, it'll stretch us. We'll realize it's richer, more inspiring, and a lot more sacrificial than we'd first imagined. In the New Testament, the word for hospitality is philonexia. Now, I may have pronounced that wrong, but I'm not kind of down with ancient Greek pronunciation too often. But what it means is a combination of two words. The first, philo or philo, which refers to brotherly love, friendship. It kind of conjures up affection. And most importantly, it refers to seeing the other person as an equal. The other part of the word, xenos, refers to the stranger, the other, the foreigner. The definition of hospitality is a love, a friendship, viewing someone as an equal, but a love directed towards the other, the stranger, the foreigner. And interestingly, when we see it occur in the Bible, it's not as an optional extra. Honestly, it's not really described as a gift. It's an instruction to faith communities. It's an instruction to leaders and influencers. So 3 thoughts that I'd love to get you to think about and ponder and to take personally when you think of the implications of hospitality for your world. The first thought is this: hospitality towards one another. In 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 9, it says, offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Without grumbling. When we look at who Jesus did life with, they made no sense on paper. They made no sense in life. They were across a political spectrum. They were across socioeconomic groups, and yet he called them friends. When we look at the early church and we see churches like in Antioch, where their leadership, not just their mission, but their leadership, was a group of people of different ethnicities, different socioeconomic groups, leading together as equals. When we think of our faith communities, what does it look like for us to show hospitality? I wonder who the other is, who your other is, who's the alien to you. Is it someone of a different ethnicity? Someone of a different background to you? Is it someone differently abled to you? I wonder if your other is someone who would vote differently from you, who would think of theological essentials in a different way to you. Now, you can have them round for a meal. You can have them at your table. You might even donate in their direction. But will you see them as an equal? Will you see them with affection, like family, like a true friend? I think our challenge that Peter said then and rings to us now is whether we can show one another true hospitality. But hospitality goes beyond that. It's also hospitality beyond the church's walls, beyond the safe spaces. And so to the Hebrew church, these words were given: do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have entertained angels without knowing it. Now, forget the angel bit for a moment. Think of the stranger again. The Hebrew church were under pressure. They weren't loved. They were dealing with tough times. And yet, even in the midst of a time when they could have pulled in and hidden away, the challenge was still go outwards. The challenge was still to show hospitality to a stranger, to someone not like you, to the other, to the alien, to the foreigner. And actually, it was a habit of the New Testament church. It was a habit of the church in its first centuries. In his book, The Rise of Christianity by Rodney Stark, he accounts the times when the church, the early church, would stick around when there was a plague in Rome. Even though others were fleeing for their own safety, to protect their own lives, the church stayed. And they would love and tend to those who were sick and dying. Even if it was great risk to them, even if it cost them their own very lives. Because as far as they were concerned, this life was the prelude to eternity. They weren't afraid of the other. They weren't afraid of the foreigner. They weren't afraid of what would happen to them. So they didn't need to pull away. They ran towards. I wonder for you and I today, as we think of our context and our world, What does it look like for us to show love to the stranger, to show love to the alien, to show love to the other? And what does it look like to show that love knowing that that person is an equal, made in the image of God, with potential, with beauty, with worth, with value, with purpose? Then the last thought I want to get us to consider is one other place where we see hospitality pop up a few times, one other kind of group. And it's to leaders and influencers. You see in 1 Timothy and in Titus when Paul is describing the qualifications for leadership, the values that we should seek out and we should look for when we're looking for leaders. Both times he recommends that they're people who are hospitable, people who love the other, the alien, the foreigner, love as family, love as brothers, love as an equal. And on one level, it shouldn't be that much of a surprise because when we look at the life of Jesus, we see somebody who called Zacchaeus, the enemy of the people, down from a tree and said, hey, I'm going to have dinner with you today. We shouldn't be surprised because we see a Jesus who touches a leper and doesn't care about whether it makes him unclean. We see a Jesus who has at his table or goes to the table of people who are deemed as sinners. And he shows them acceptance and welcome. We see that he doesn't care about his reputation. He doesn't need to protect what he's got. He needs to show what love looks like. And I wonder what it could look like for us. Yes, in our churches, but in our places of work, in our cubicles, in everything we are and do. One of my favorite examples of this is actually at my kids' school, in their elementary school. Every year, the principal of the school would send a letter out to the parents and to the kids telling us all the different countries kids were coming from, and saying this is a wonderful opportunity to welcome people and to celebrate who they are and what they're going to bring to our school. Then in the first assembly of the year, he'd get all the new kids to rise from all the different nations, and they would get a round of applause. It was a way of welcoming them, of saying that they had value, to saying that they were contributing and that they were friends. They were new friends. They were lasting friends. In our time and in our day, there's so much we can disagree on, and we may continue to. But I would ask us to consider, to take this unfashionable word, this unfashionable phrase, and take it personally. Take it personally on how you do family. Take it personally on how you do friendship. Take it personally on how you treat the other. And if you don't know someone who's your other, it's time. It's time to make friends beyond your walls, beyond your race, beyond your economic group, beyond your world, beyond your comfort zone, beyond all that's made you. And to offer it freely. Yes, it's an instruction. Yes, it's an opportunity. But honestly, if we do this, it's a gift too. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. This was another amazing way for us to kick off our evening and to start by just thinking about not only is this a responsibility, but it can become a gift to us to just think this way about the world, about all those people around us. Well, what I'm excited about is what's about to happen in your local location. We know that when these talks happen on your campus from friends of yours, from your peers who've been thinking about a topic and really wanting to address it with you and invite you in to a conversation of learning, of maybe debate, of discussion, that this will probably end up being some of your favorite parts of this whole night, are hearing from your peers. And so we're excited about these leaders. They've been working hard. They've been preparing for a long time to deliver this talk tonight. And so as we send it back to your local host, I hope you have great talks, but I also hope it's going to help you engage in some deeper dialogue, some respectful conversation with one another. And then we'll see you back for another couple of talks from the national broadcast.